Arcane Season 2 is about to drop, so we thought it would be a perfect time to recap and go over Season 1 and get excited and hyped for the next season.
I'd like to let you in on a secret. The topsiders are leaving us further and further behind.
What have you done with my sister?
We'll go over it for you guys and talk about what we think along the way so that you can get refreshed and at the same time kind of get our insights and perspectives on the series.
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
Where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
we're your hosts,
Andrew.
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And today we're recapping Season 1 of Arcane.
3, 2, 1,
Action. One of our most highly anticipated shows is almost here, a week away from the day of us recording this. And that is Arcane. Season 2 is about to drop, so we thought it would be a perfect time to recap and go over Season 1 and get excited and hyped for the next season.
Yeah, going over Netflix's highly reviewed and extremely anticipated Season 2 of Arcane is going to be a lot of fun. The first season, I think, really shocked audiences with its stellar animation. It got really good reviews from critics and general audiences alike, based on the popular video game League of Legends that took the world by storm and has for, over a decade now. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest game in competitive gaming, and has a huge fan base with a ton of lore that we don't claim to know everything about. But I looked into it a little bit today to get some background for predictions for Season 2. There's like I said, a wealth of lore in the games that the show is even inventing new lore. Like characters don't have the names yet that they have in League of Legends in the show because it's predating the character that they will become eventually.
That's cool.
So it's really interesting. What Riot Games has done in developing this TV show is really cool, and it's a big investment in their game and in launching it to new audiences. I have to imagine gameplay numbers went up for League of Legends after this show came out.
Oh, absolutely. Whenever there's like a TV show or a movie being dropped from the game has to see a big surge in playing time, like The Last of Us. I know both of us went over and played The Last of Us when the TV series dropped. So
I think it's a great thing to introduce it to new audience members too, because we get into these really bad habits of gatekeeping in different quote unquote nerd communities, whether it's comics or video games or different things like that. And I think that this is awesome to get a new fan base and new eyes on things. Even all the different iterations we've had of Avatar: The Last Airbender, people complain about the movie and the show, but it introduces it to new people, and then maybe people that haven't seen the animated series that we love, and then the comics that you've read, I haven't read yet, but just more eyes on it, more people to talk about it with, a bigger community, more love for something that is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Invincible show dropped and it introduced us to the comics. Neither of us had read the comics up until that point, and now we've read all of them, and it's one of our favorite series that we've interacted with.
I doubt I ever would have discovered it.
Right.
If not for Prime.
Yeah, I don't think I would either, for sure.
But let's get back into our topic at hand. We're really excited that you clicked on this video. Thank you for joining us for this. We're going to get into a recap soon. I believe we're going to start by watching Netflix's posted video recap to kind of spark some of the memory. It's been a while since we watched Season 1, even though we've gone back, both of us, and watched a little bit of it. After we play this clip that Netflix showing a highly cinematic recap of the season, it's just a short 4-minute clip, then we'll go back and talk about the season and our recollection of everything that happened so that you can get caught up to speed. You don't have to rewatch the whole first season, and you'll feel ready and refreshed to watch Season 2 when it comes out.
All right, let's go ahead and get this going. Before we start, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our other episodes. Like Andrew said, thanks for joining, and here is the recap video.
I'd like to let you in on a secret. The topsiders are leaving us further and further behind. But real power doesn't come to those who are born strongest. It comes to those who will do anything to achieve it.
When I was a
Aside from
kid,
the soundtrack, I didn't even think about it. I literally haven't thought about that to
a
this
monster's
moment.
gonna get you, and I'm here. Then a real monster showed up.
I was watching the whole episode
The
today and
Undercity deserve freedom.
This war is not the way.
It's the only way.
They took Vander.
We need to fight back.
I can help.
You're not ready.
Fly. Oh, they wanted to help.
Jinx!
Please, please.
I told you to stay away!
Please, Violet. I need you, please.
Hello. Where's your sister?
She is not my sister anymore.
It's okay. We'll show them. We will show them all.
I believe I've discovered something incredible. A way to harness magic through science. Imagine the wonders it could create. The lives it could save.
It's time for the era of magic.
You don't understand what's at stake. The Arcane is dangerous.
If you do this, the cycle of violence will never stop.
When you're going to change the world, don't ask for permission.
The only way to defeat the Topsiders is to become what they fear. And now I have the power. Ready to rise to the surface.
The Undercity cannot be controlled.
Then we go in by force.
Fire!
This is too far gone.
I'm here to guide you to the right decisions.
Prepare to defend your people.
Hi.
What have you done with my sister?
I'll give her your regard. Powder's gone. All that's left is Jinx.
Here we go.
You can't change her.
I have to try. I'm gonna bring your empire down all around you.
Then what are you waiting for?
We lost ourselves. We have to make it right. We can demonstrate our compassion, our dedication, our solidarity.
I support Councillor Talus's proposal for peace.
You've got a good heart. Don't ever lose it. Protect the family.
There's a monster inside all of us. It's time to let the monster out.
I'm different. But you changed too. Are we still sisters? Nothing is ever going to change that. Here's to the new us.
Okay, pause it there for me. November 9th, Act 1. November 10th, Act 2. 23rd for Act 3?
So they're probably going to drop like 3 episodes at a time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, because the first season was 9 episodes, so that makes a lot of sense. Which, if the first season's any indication, like you talked about, the 3-episode mark, which would be Act 1, is gonna leave you on the edge of your
destroy
seat.
you.
You'd be fiending for Act 2. So does that say November 16th then for Act 2? Just spreading it out across November to have people talking about it longer?
Yep. Looks that way.
At first I read it as 10th. Because I don't know, it looks a little...
No. For us that can see well, it says 16. So, yeah, I'm happy I can be your eyes. Yeah. Dude, this show is so good. We were kind of talking over a little bit. Sorry if you hate that, whatever. But the
Everyone
animation is so good in this show, and that's what definitely like captivates me into the story the most. I think the characters are really cool as well. There's some political stuff that's a little bit slower in this show, and not political in the sense of like relating to today's world necessarily, but just kind of them talking about
the politics of their world.
Right, the two cities kind of going back and forth between the rich and the poor, and
there's no other
who's
way
going to control what.
And that is a good way to phrase it. There's no other way to say it, because it's the politicking between the overcity of Piltover and the undercity of Zon, and the complications of them being basically neighboring, but one person is literally beneath the other and looked down on, and the people of Zon and the undercity are poor, and they have very minimal options and no real chance to move up, whereas the people of Piltover live very comfortably, as they touch on right in the opening of the show. I mean, after the bridge sequence, you get to them as kids, and they're going on their little mission to steal from Piltover, and they talk about how the top half lives. The topsiders live great. They don't want for anything. They don't go hungry. So there is a lot of strife between those two civilizations. And I think outside of the animation, to me, that's one of the strengths of the show. The hard part is, like you already touched on, the strongest characters and the strongest character work for me is all in the Undercity. And so I want to be with them the whole time, even though the topsiders and those characters and those conflicts create the dynamic that make the story so good. Time spent in the politicking world of the Upsiders is just aesthetically boring to audience members. I think a lot of people have that complaint.
It still looks good. It's just not as much as happening in that time of the story as when we're in the underworld, going through the streets, and there's like drugged up people that are fighting each other. It's hard to compete with that in terms of entertainment. But like you said, it's important to the story. Hopefully in season 2, there's maybe a little bit less time spent on them kind of talking about the conflicts and more time of the characters actually interacting with each other, whether that is fighting or even just arguing or talking between the two sides, rather than kind of politicking among themselves of, should we let them be their own city? Should we, like go in there and enforce our rules on them? Like, how are we going to go about all of this? And what are we going to do with this magical power that, what's the orb called? The hex core is going to be about.
Yeah, I think that we might have a kind of saving grace in season 2, in that it seems like Vi and Caitlin, which are two of my favorite characters, are going to be more involved with the topsiders. I mean, obviously, Caitlin's already an enforcer, or was an enforcer until she got fired in the first season. I think she'll be an enforcer again in season 2. Spoiler alert, you can skip ahead 15 seconds if you don't want to hear a potential spoiler. It's a prediction for season 2. But in the lore of League of Legends, Vi becomes an enforcer eventually. So Caitlin becomes the sheriff, and if that all takes place in season 2, then they'll be heavily involved with the topsiders, Vi working with them. So we'll see two of those favorite characters kind of mixed in with that world, which will help, I think, kind of buoy that side up with some characters that we really like, because the bottom side of Zon already has so many really interesting characters, namely Jinx, Echo are two of my favorites that I think are really cool, so they kind of need to balance that out. I think Heimerdinger's really cool, but I think he ended off season 1 in the Undercity too with Echo and the Firelights, are they called?
Yeah. I think you're right.
Like they're like the Dragonfly-esque looking Freedom Force.
They fly on these really cool looking hoverboards that leave a trail of green light. Looks so cool.
But I do want to get into our recap for season 1. So we'll go over it for you guys and talk about what we think along the way, so that you can get refreshed and at the same time kind of get our insights and perspectives on the series. So season 1 of Arcane starts off on the bridge with the war between the Zonites, led by Vander, and they're fighting against the people of Piltover, which is, their military force is called the Enforcers, so the Enforcers are fighting off against this rebel rebellion from Zon, and in this conflict, Powder and Vi's parents are killed, and when Vander sees these two kids on their own who have faced this trauma and become orphans from the fighting, he throws down his gauntlets and picks up the kids and leaves, and the conflict ends there with kind of Zon forfeiting, in a sense, because he's leaving to protect the kids and he was the leader. And then we have a time jump forward where this series is really kind of an epic in terms of the amount of ground is covered physically and also the length of time. So by my best estimation, the series covers around 6 to 10 years, just by visually looking at the kids and seeing how much they age. Because I don't think they give any indication exactly of how much time. But the next time jump is a couple years. The kids are a little bit older. Like I talked about, they're going to do this raid on Piltover. It's the gang of 4 that we start the show off with is Vi, Powder, Clagger, and Milo. And they go into this house in Piltover that looks really wealthy, and they're searching it for different gadgets and trying to take stuff home to have a good haul of things to sell.
Yeah, they get word from Echo.
That Echo works at Benzo's. Echo is like a little tech head, so he's able to help fix a lot of things, but he keeps his ear out and learns a lot of information from the adults, and they get the tip off from Echo. So inadvertently, Powder ends up taking these little blue gems that we come to find out is Hex Tech, and it's this mineral that is related to the Arcane, which is just another word for magic in this world. And Jace is a scientist in the world of Piltover who's trying to harness the magic of the Hex Tech and use science to control magic to advance their society.
And he knows it's possible because when he was a kid, he came across someone who was actually able to harness the power of this magical orb.
Yeah, and I think that's why his mother has those 2 or 3 robotic fingers, because that when that person saved her, she was injured. But when Powder takes the Hex Tech, she drops one of the orbs on the ground as she's leaving, and it creates this huge explosion that rumbles through Piltover, and the group of 4 have to all escape, running away from the enforcers. So this is what kicks off a lot of the conflict in the series. They lose their haul because they encounter some henchmen of Silco's, and Powder has to throw it in the water. But the one thing that they keep is the Hex Tech. So you've got the people of Piltover who are upset that Zonites are coming up and wreaking havoc and stealing from them, starting a rift where the Council of Piltover wants to send out enforcers and basically turns on upside down to find these thieves. And then the people underneath, they already have kind of this rumbling feeling of restlessness and rebellion, wanting to fight off against, because they're the have-nots. They want to fight for their equality. And so this rift is growing even more and more between the top and bottom. But where should I go from here? I don't want to get too bogged down in like the minor details of the show.
Yeah, one of the deputies knows Vander pretty well, and they kind of have a good rapport.
They have a deal together. That's important because Vander and her both kind of want peace, and we see that she says a line too when she talks to the council when they're turning Zon upside down. She's like, "Don't you think they've had enough? Like we've gone after them, we've done this and that." She kind of wants the council to back off because she knows she's on the ground. She knows that there's a rift, and she doesn't want to spark that powder keg and have a war go.
Yeah. And then
Vander wants the same thing. He wants peace.
Right, but then Silco, is that his name?
Silco, yeah.
Silco,
Vander's ex-partner.
He bribes one of the officers, pretty much, right? And then
Marcus.
And stuff ends up happening. Conflict ends up happening, kind of as they're all meeting, and we see our first time the guy who's juiced up on, what do they call it? Shimmer, and he ends up killing that deputy that Vander was acquaintances with, and then Vander ends up getting kidnapped. Yeah, because he was going to surrender himself as the one who stole the orb.
He was surrendering himself as a proxy to the kids to give them someone to pin everything on.
Yeah, and then that deputy died. He got captured.
Benzo dies too, I think. Benzo's like the shop owner who was really close friends with Vander from their days of rebellion.
Yeah. So then we go into kind of episode 3 where I think it's Echo again gets information on why they're holding Vander.
Yeah, he comes back and tells Vi and the crew about Vander getting kidnapped and where he thinks that Silco would bring them. So Vi says, we've got to go and try to get Vander back. But she's taking only Milo and Clagger. She tells Powder that she's not ready, which I think she told her she was ready for the whole, burglary. So I think maybe in a sense it's has to do less with her faith in Jinx less to do with her faith in Powder at the time, but more to do with maybe trying to protect her from what she thinks is too dangerous.
It's a dangerous thing. She's a younger kid, but also she did kind of indirectly cause the explosion that happened earlier, and that made things a lot worse, and now they're in this situation because of that.
And later on when Vi has an outburst at Powder, she calls her a Jinx. She says, like, you're just like what Milo said, you're a Jinx. Yeah. Which unveils kind of some of her maybe baser feelings that she's burying down.
Right, because Milo before they went after Vander, told Powder to stay back because she's a jinx. Because whenever she comes, something bad happens. So she just kind of jinxes the operation or the mission. So she ends up staying back. They leave, but then unknown to them, she follows.
Yeah, she follows him behind them, and when Vi, Milo, and Clagger are trying to sneak Vander out, things start to go awry, and they all start fighting. And Powder, in an effort to help, she takes one of her little monkey symbol clacker bombs and attaches the hex core to it, not knowing the extent of the power of the hex core. And she drops it into the fight to try and help everybody, but she accidentally causes a huge explosion that kills some of her best friends.
Milo and Clagger.
Yeah.
And
injures.
Vander's hurt, Vi is down, and then Vander ends up taking the shimmer and saving Vi, but in the fall, as he jumps out of this building, he ends up getting hit too hard, and he ends up passing away, and then Vi is crying on the ground with Vander. Obviously, Milo and Clagger just died too. I'm crying on the couch. Didn't know what was about to hit me. And then Jinx walks in, or Powder at this time walks in, and she's all excited that she helped, that she saved them. She blew up the bad guys, and now her friends, and Vander can get out of there, but she didn't realize that the explosion actually ended up killing a lot of the people that she loved and cared about. And Vi was in the heat of battle, emotions were high, she was frustrated, sad, and ended up slapping Powder, saying, "You are just a jinx," and kind of ran away out of frustration. And Powder's there on the ground crying. She's probably, like 6 years old, 7 years
6 to
old?
8, I would say.
So she's overwhelmed with emotion and disappointment, and she feels alone and abandoned and guilty. And Silicone walks in and comforts her. And
at definitely the lowest moment in her life, because she's already lost both her parents, been made an orphan.
Yeah.
She lost 2 of her only friends, Milo and Clagger, by her own hand, by mistake. She lost her surrogate father, now that Vander's dead, and her only main connection in the world being Vi, her sister, just
mad at her, slapped her,
abandoned her.
Yeah. And Silico gives her the love and care and reassurance in that moment that she needed. And right as Vi was going to go back to help her, she gets drugged and kidnapped by the
Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus,
the enforcer.
Who's the enforcer who Silicone was paying.
Which I definitely want to pause here at the end of Act 1 of Season 1.
Yeah, first 3 episodes.
Yeah, and let's kind of go over some of the details, especially of this event, because this is so crazy. So many things happen in this 3 episode.
It feels like this was Season 1 and the next part is Season 2.
Yeah, Season 2 of Season 1.
Yeah.
But there's just so much is packed into there, and I think none of us really expected it, because you're watching Season 1 and you're thinking, end of episode 1, maybe they'll do a shocking death. When you're watching a show, I feel like this is your general thought process.
Yeah.
That maybe they'll get me connected a little bit to one character, do a shocking death for character arc.
I like that character, but oh well.
Season 2, you're lulled into a sense of security, or episode 2, you're lulled into a sense of security. Episode 3, we're sat with these characters for the season. Maybe some way halfway, 3/4.
Maybe one dies.
Yeah, and then they hit you with the craziest.
All of them die.
And killed by a hero. One of the protagonists kills them by mistake. So it's
the youngest one, the one that you feel most connected to in that moment because, she's so young.
Yeah. The most innocent too. And
right.
my jaw hit the floor. Also, they've built up to this point that her little contraptions don't work that well.
Mm-hmm.
She is technically minded and she is mechanically inclined. She's skilled. But earlier in episode 1, she throws that little mouse.
It doesn't work.
And it doesn't work. It just has a plume of pink smoke. So you don't have this expectation that she's going to be the first one to harness and use this arcane magic.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I think it's one of the most jaw-dropping moments in a TV show that I've witnessed in any of the shows I've ever watched. It still sticks with you.
That was like the hook and anchor, that pulled me in and got me locked in for the rest of the season.
It honestly kind of pulls you through the rest of the political part of the show that you said isn't that enjoyable. That part's so good that it's like
you have to get through.
You're riding on momentum.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have stopped watching the show for anything.
Also, before we move on to kind of the next 2 acts of the show, I gotta say this episode 3, one of the coolest fights and animation sequences that we have gotten in a show or a movie. Period.
Where Vi's fighting with
She's got the 2 gauntlets. Yeah. She's going against some Shimmeroid People.
That was the poster for the show too. It was Vi's silhouetted back with the big hulking brute in front of her.
And the fight is really cool. It lasts a long time. I feel like the last 20 minutes or so is just all action, go, go, go. And on top of that, having that big impact that just guts you.
Yeah.
It just really locks you in for the rest of the season. But yeah, like, I love going back to the show. I haven't rewatched the whole show, but I'll go back and rewatch moments. And this is that first moment that I'll go back and rewatch is episode 3. It's so good.
Yeah, I want to talk too about how this show doesn't waste anything really in terms of character development, in terms of written material. So even though we lose a bunch of characters in this climactic moment in the 3rd episode, where we lose Vander, we lose Milo and Clagger, their presence is felt throughout the rest of the show. And actually literally is in other moments in the show because of Jinx / Powder's hallucinations. We'll see lots of Milo, a little bit of Clagger, and then Vander's presence is definitely felt. It's not just in flashbacks with Silco, but also his impact on Vi and Jinx is like outright and outspoken throughout the rest of the show. So they are important in the rest of the show. And the characters are so interesting, and I want to talk about this as we go further along, but you can just cherry picking Vander and Silco, the way that they have these kind of perpendicular arcs that cross one another, where they're each well-intentioned, but one is kind of doing good things for the wrong reason, and one's doing bad things for a good reason. And Vander's motivations could be called selfish because he's trying to quell all the rebellious attitudes to like protect the kids and to avoid the fighting, because he's thinking, peace now. He's not thinking about the long term. Silco is thinking about the long term, but he's willing to sacrifice everything to get there. Talking about how, right out of his own mouth, he says that power doesn't come to those who are the smartest or the strongest. It comes to those that are willing to do anything, no matter how heinous, to get it. So I think they're a really interesting character study in and of themselves.
Absolutely.
Because Silco has lots of moments of humanity, even though he does horrible things, experiments on humans, takes advantage of people, and you could argue he takes advantage of Powder and cares about her. He is the one that's there to comfort her, even if it's for selfish reasons. But it's just very interesting to me how you can paint Vander out in a bad light when you look at his past and the ways that he betrayed Silco, and in a lot of ways created the villainous Silco that we'll come to know in the show as like a bad guy. He turned Silco down that road, even though we see Vander as like this altruistic hero. He's not all good. He's hiding things from people. He has that deal with the enforcers that maybe a lot of other people wouldn't look favorably upon, even if it's well-intentioned. It's the same thing with Silco. He thinks of himself as well-intentioned, and all the way to his end with Powder is kind of rooting for Powder, and Powder. That's skipping ahead to that dinner table scene. We'll kind of talk about that when we get to it. But a lot of these characters have very complicated arcs. Like we see Vi's worst moment. None of the characters are really simple. And I think Jinx is the perfect example of that too, because she's the most complicated character in the show.
Yeah, it's a really good dynamic. It's nice when we have characters that are flawed, even when it's the characters that we're supposed to be rooting for, because that's relatable, because no one's perfect. Silco and Vander were on the same side. They were leading the rebellion together on that bridge in the opening sequence, like you were talking about. And Vander, I think, was like realizing that things were getting out of hand, and Silicone was going too far. And then, kind of in a later episode, we see their kind of battle that they had, and
almost drowned,
and how he kind of just left him there, right?
Yeah.
And that, I feel like Vander realized that they were going too far, and that's like a good quality, right? That he's realizing, like, okay, we're entering the point of no return here. We're becoming the villains.
Yeah, I feel like he realized that the price wasn't worth the product, but at the same time, he didn't find a middle ground. He just kind of gave up. So you can fault him for that too.
Yeah.
He kind of just went back to the last drop, his bar, and just sat there.
And that's like kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for Silco to go that extra mile, this is not working. We got to do more.
Silco was like, if nobody else is going to do it for me, I have to do it for myself.
Right.
And he doesn't have what Vander has. He doesn't have the brawn.
Yeah.
So he just has, the only thing he has is his tenacity. That's the only thing he feels like he's literally drowning and his people are drowning. you're going to do anything you can to breathe again.
Right.
So that's the argument for Silco is he sees it as the only option. To him, it's not such a bad thing to do to try and survive.
Yeah. So before we go on to this last half of the season, I pulled up IMDb. It's got a 9 out of 10 for the first season.
Wow.
And then when you go, it looks like it won 4 primetime Emmys. You go to just season 1 to look at the individual episodes. Episode 3, 9.6 out of 10. And then you scroll all the way down for the episode 9, which was the finale, also a 9.6 out of 10. All the other episodes are an 8.9, 9.2 for like 4 of them, 8.7, 8.5 looks to be the lowest. And that was the first 2,
Those are incredible
which I think
scores.
those were even better than maybe some of the middle ones here that have a higher score. So a lot of people really like this show.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons too that everyone has a consensus on this show being good is probably the way that they integrate action and music, or storytelling and music in general. Because whether it's a fighting moment or somber moment, they pick incredible songs that really connect you to the story.
Absolutely. All right, you want to get into this
What happens next? Yeah, we have another time jump.
Yes.
So they jump forward again a couple years, and Vi has been held in a prison, the Topsiders prison, because Marcus captured her and threw her in there. And Powder, who's now morphing into this new villainous persona, becoming the character that she'll eventually be called Jinx, has been basically getting raised, manipulated, molded, mentored by Silco.
Corrupted.
Yeah. Adjectives. Lots of adjectives. She's been changing.
Forced.
It's a great character transformation, too, because she goes from being the most innocent to the most damaged and
also
corrupted.
the least capable to
the biggest, one of the biggest threats.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And big part of her becoming a big threat is that she is one of the few people that is harnessing the hex technology to create weapons. And the Zonites already had Shimmer on their side because Silco was already working with, I think his name's Singed in the League of Legends, one of the scientists, to develop Shimmer. So those are the 2 most powerful elements in the world of Arcane right now is Shimmer, which enhances people and turns them into monsters, makes them stronger. And they're trying to stabilize it. And then they're also trying to stabilize the Hex Tech, which has all kinds of applications because it's basically magic. They use it for teleportation, for travel, for transporting goods, but then it can also be used with the destructive capabilities like we see later in the series as well. So we start off with both those characters, and we get to Jace, where we can see that Jace and his development along with Victor, the development of Hex Tech has really brought him up in the Topsiders world. Jace will eventually become a member of the council. He's brought his house up so much because originally his house was just people that were builders. They were like hammersmiths or something like that. They were known for creating the collapsible pocket wrench, was like their biggest claim to fame until Jace created this new technology. You're smiling at me.
Big step. Big step.
Yeah. big things.
Look.
Dude, it already fit in my pocket. No, but look how much less space it takes up now in my pocket.
now Jace is like, magic.
Oh yeah, and the other big character is Caitlyn. She's from a notable house, but she kind of went against tradition, and instead of going into one of the
politics and royalty,
one of those higher fields, she went into being an enforcer because she's passionate about it, and she is investigating this case that leads her to go and talk to Vi in prison, and then Vi breaks out of prison, and
she breaks her out.
Yeah,
or gets her out.
Yeah,
I don't know if she breaks.
Maybe she does get her out.
I think she just kind of talks to the guard, and I forget, but I don't think they broke out necessarily.
Yeah, and
she gets out.
Yeah, so eventually, what happens is Vi and Caitlyn leave the prison together.
Yeah,
they're on a mission together to go down to the Undercity and solve this investigation that Caitlyn's working on to try and figure out the corruption, what's going on with the development of Shimmer and the heinous applications of Hex Tech as well. But the underlying motivation for Vi is she wants to go back and find her sister Powder as well.
Right. Well, wasn't it, didn't Jinx go up to the whatever the city is.
Go and talk to Caitlin.
No, where
She has that later.
she fights Echo in the firelights. Doesn't that happen first? Because she like steals that stuff, kills some people. She ends up killing or injuring one of her own people. And then isn't that what Caitlin was investigating?
Maybe. Yeah.
Something like that. I think Powder did something, and that caused Caitlin to start investigating the
Zonites.
Yes.
Well, more like Silco's crew specifically,
right,
amongst the Zonites.
Yeah.
His little gang. I listened to like a very in-depth recap, but the season is really dense. There's a lot that goes on, and we're split between the top side and the bottom side, so it's a lot to keep track of.
Yes.
A lot to keep track of. I was covering my mouth when I said that. But there's this. So they're originally at odds, but they start to become more and more friendly, Caitlin and Vi. And they go down to the Undercity. I think they go to the last drop. They have eventually they have a fight with Silco's enforcers, with his people. Eventually, Vi comes into contact with Jinx again. They have a hug and embrace. When Jinx/Powder sees Caitlin come up, though, she gets upset and enraged and starts a fight and almost kills Caitlin.
Yes.
And then I think that's when the firelights show up.
Yes.
And they kidnap Caitlin and Vi, and they end up taking some of Jinx's tech also.
Mm-hmm.
But Jinx herself gets away.
Yes.
Which Jinx just has been programmed to think very negatively of topsiders and especially enforcers, so it makes sense for her to get very upset when she sees Caitlin. And that's where a lot of the conflicts in the show, they don't feel thin, they don't feel manufactured, but they feel like they make sense, because you don't want to have Vi and Jinx reunite and then they just hug and everything's happy and all conflicts in the show dissolve. You want to build conflicts in the show for the rest of the season. But you also don't want to make it seem like you're just writing means to justify the ends. So they have a very natural way of kind of coalescing that, where when Caitlin shows up, that sparks something inside Jinx, and she starts hearing voices in her head. And, she's, like I said, she's been programmed since a very young age by Silco to see them as the enemy. So she can't comprehend Vi working with a topsider. That doesn't make any sense to her. They're the enemy. And then the fight starts, and then things get all the more complicated when the firelights showed up.
What goes on after this? Because this is kind of where it kind of all blends together for me. We have a lot of the political stuff going on the top side now, right? And then now we're being introduced to the firelights den, if you will. And from there, what goes on?
So on the top side, I'm not too sure. Just zone out for all those parts. But
I watched 2 or 3 recaps today too, and this part's all like blurred.
I think around this part is where Victor's getting more aggressive with his experimentation with Hex Tech on the top side. He's working with kind of a budding love interest, as a female character who is interested in him. And with his more and more aggressive experimentation, I think he's working on trying to bring dead things back to life. Part of that is because Victor is dying of a disease, and he wants this technology to help him kind of save his own life, but he also wants to help people. His aggressive experimentation, I think her name's Sky, maybe, but the love interest he has, she ends up dying through his experimentation. And as a last resort, I believe in this part of the story, he goes down to Zon and starts talking to Singed, which was somebody he had an old relationship with. Singed is like the dark scientist down in the Undercity who's experimenting with Shimmer. And so we start that relationship where we get a little bit of development of Victor of who he'll eventually become, which is like this completely, in League of Legends, he's like this completely machine cyborg man. So that's starting his trend in that direction. What's going on with Jace? I think he's already joined the council.
Yeah, they kicked out
Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger goes down to the Undercity, and he eventually will end up with the Firelights too.
I believe that happens when they go and fight on the bridge again, and Powder
fights Echo,
or Jinx ends up showing up again, and it was an awesome sequence between Echo and Jinx, and she ends up kind of getting beat by Echo, and she ends up dropping one of the bombs that injures herself and also injures Echo. And then
Heimerdinger ends up finding Echo and helping him back to the hideout.
Yeah, and then Jinx goes back with Silco, and he brings her to that evil scientist, who then injects her with the steroid thing.
Stabilized form of Shimmer,
Yes.
now that they've like improved it.
Right. And that messes her psychology up even more. And then that's kind of getting into the last like 2 episodes there. Because I think that's the end of the bridge is episode 7.
And then there's for me, the next major plot point would just be the end of the show.
Yeah.
When Vi is at that dinner table scene with Jinx, she comes to find Jinx, and Jinx has, I think at that point, Silco's like tied up to a chair. As her mental state's just deteriorating. She doesn't know who to trust. She doesn't know if she's going to go with her sister or with her new surrogate father, which is Silco. And when it comes down to it, Silco tries to break out and kill Vi, but in order to protect her sister, Jinx kills Silco. So she, in a snap decision, decides to protect her sister, kill her surrogate father. And you think maybe everything is going to be happy-go-lucky from here, you know? Maybe a little bit tarnished, a little bit worse for wear, but you think they can find their way back. But Jinx picks up a rocket that she's connected with the power of the Hex tech, and she fires it at the council, which, another big plot point here.
Which is how this trailer thing, that recap trailer that just ended, that we watched earlier in this episode, that was the end of the season.
Yeah. Another big plot point here that is something else I can remember that involves Jace. So when Jace starts working with Vi and Caitlyn, he's trying to go after like the production of Shimmer in Zaun, and they're going after the Silco factories. So that's where we see Vi get the big gauntlet, hands, the big weapons that she has in League of Legends, and Jace uses the big hammer, which are both powered by Hex tech. Jace accidentally ends up killing a child in the altercation, which makes him kind of want to do a 180 and stop fighting the Zaunites. He wants to find a different solution, but Vi sees it as the only way, so she keeps going along that path of fighting Silco, trying to fight Silco and bring her sister back. Jace goes back to the council, and he ends up trying to form a peace deal with Silco. So this is where I think Silco's even more complicated, is that he does agree to peace talks with Jace, and they're going to stop fighting against the Zaunites. And Chase takes this peace offering back to the council, and he's having that conversation. The council is all in the process of agreeing to peace with Zaun, and they're going to kind of move forward in a more amicable direction between Piltover and Zaun. But that is when Jinx's rocket hits the council and blows them up and ends the season. So we're going to be picking up season 2, where what we would have had was moving forward with peace. Instead, Powder/Jinx has kind of turned that completely upside down in killing the whole council. A Zaunite killing the highest regarded members of Piltover is not going to go over well, and the conflict's going to be kicked off worse than ever, we can imagine. We can speculate.
Yeah, it's a complex story. There's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of characters.
I think I remember something key there. The peace thing is like a big deal because it's...
Well, the offer, I think, was to be separate from the city, but you have to give me Jinx. I think that was the offer. Because she had to pay for what she did on the bridge.
Okay, so he was going to give her up.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, see, I didn't...
If I'm remembering correctly.
But I know that the end result was going to be, like you said, you're correct, that they were going to basically, separate the two cities.
Yeah. And the underworld can be independent.
Yeah. They don't have to worry about being stepped on.
What are you looking forward to in season 2? I've heard, isn't this like the last season of like this story?
Yes. So that's another thing that we can talk about for a second here too, is the creators of the show have announced that season 2 is going to be the end of this storyline. So it won't be necessarily the end of Arcane or the end of animated League of Legends productions with Riot Games. It'll be the end of the Jinx and Vi saga, basically, because League of Legends has access to a host of characters. I think over 100 characters, we talked about it on our last Arcane episode. They have a ton of different playable characters in the game with lore and backstories. Jinx and Vi are a small subset of storylines within the greater League of Legends world. So ending the story doesn't mean necessarily that we're guaranteed to never see Jinx and Vi again. The whole world is kind of integrated with like a whole bunch of cities. Like they mentioned Noxus in season 1. Noxus will probably be a bigger part in season 2. There's a whole bunch of different clans. Only a fraction of them have been introduced, like the Medarda clan or the houses, like House Talus that Jace comes from. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff to get into in the world, and we may see Jinx and Vi kind of reprise their roles coming back, weaving in and out of stories for other characters. I do think with the success of these seasons, I imagine season 2 is going to do really well also, that they'll continue with new storylines of other characters from League of Legends world.
As someone who hasn't necessarily played the games and doesn't know all of the lore and stuff, how do you feel about that? That they're kind of ending the bulk of these characters' stories and maybe moving on to other stories within the world. Is that something that is exciting to you? Or are you kind of bummed because they're your main characters and you're a purist and you maybe... Do you think you won't like the show as much without Vi and Caitlyn and Jinx being the forefront? Or do you think it's interesting because it's something new and we get to expand the world? And like you said, like they might still show up, so it'd be a cool little treat when they do. Yeah, Where do you sit?
I think it's going to be super dependent on how they execute it and what route they decide to go because, excuse me, Spoiler alert again, you can skip ahead 15 seconds if you don't want to hear another prediction that I found online. But I'm going to tell you, so good luck. But apparently Vander may not be dead. He's representative of a character in the game that they think would be Warwick. He's a werewolf type character, and they think that he might be reincarnated because he had the shimmer in his blood. They think he might have been taken away by, I think the Singed is supposed to have something to do with creating that actual character.
Interesting.
So potentially we could get a lot of interweaving storylines of characters coming back like Vander. That would be my hope. I think if they executed it well, it could be a lot of fun. Kind of similar to how Legends of Korra is a great show, even though we don't have much of the characters reprising their roles from Avatar: The Last Airbender. We have some of the characters like Zuko, Toph, and Katara coming back in their elderly form. And even Iroh coming back later in Legends of Korra in the spiritual space. I think that if characters are weaving back in and out like that, it could be a lot of fun. I think in this particular context, I'm maybe not as attached to the Arcane characters as I was to the Avatar: The Last Airbender characters, so I probably could be even more open to the concept of a new season following different characters. As long as it still has the same quality of storytelling and animation, I think I would be really open to it and enjoy it. But how do you feel?
I kind of teeter-totter back and forth. I think it'll highly depend on like how this season goes. What new characters are introduced? Are we introduced to the characters that we are going to follow later on? Or is it going to feel like a whole new show?
I think we'll probably get at least a few more champions from the game. I just looked it up to confirm the number, and it says over 140 champions in the League of Legends world.
Wow.
So it's a lot. They have a lot of access. They could go 100 seasons.
Yeah. As of right now, I trust them because the first season was so good, and I'm very excited for season 2. I feel like the marketing hasn't been as kind of in your face as maybe it should be for how good season 1 was and how praised it is online and throughout our friends as well.
Yeah, I haven't heard.
So I hope enough people watch season 2, to make sure that they get the funding and everything that they need for season 3. I definitely don't want it to stop after season 2.
Yeah.
I do think it's maybe a benefit in some way to kind of move on earlier than later rather than just kind of drawing out these characters and kind of forcing a story out of them per se and kind of keeping it new and fresh if they do this for another 5 or 6 seasons or something and it's always feeling kind of like it's being new life is being added to the stories and maybe they kick back into these characters later on and it's a cool like interweave of all these characters that we've gotten to know. I think it could be cool.
I'm a big fan of ending a show when it's at its peak. I think that you want to end it when it's still good. And I think Jerry Seinfeld had a good talking point on this when he was ending Seinfeld is like ending a show when you're at the top of your game still. And Quentin Tarantino says this a lot too about how he wants to, his last directed movie, he wants to be a good movie. He doesn't want to stop directing because nobody's watching his movies anymore. He wants to go out on top of the game. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Me as a viewer, I want to enjoy the whole show. There are shows that I love the first half, but I know that I'm looking toward watching seasons I don't like as much, and I'll probably stop watching it in seasons 5 or 6. But then watching Breaking Bad, it's like you couldn't stop me from watching Breaking Bad. And you could chain me up and stop me from finishing season 5 of Breaking Bad because the whole show is good. I'm not upset that it ended when I finished Breaking Bad. I'm happy that it happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think if I trust these writers, they did a good job making me enjoy season 1. And if they know what they're doing like I think they do, then they just know that 2 seasons is the story that they wanted to tell.
Yeah, you want to leave the audience wanting a little more. You know, I think that's a better place to be than giving the audience too much.
Yeah. Because all it takes is one season too many. And,
right.
And then you've gone too far.
And it could taint the whole show.
Yeah.
Too, because it's like,
people always talk bad about the last season of Game of Thrones, the last season of Lost, the last
that's
season.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, and it
Dexter.
I think takes down the quality of the whole season.
Even a show
if it's ending not as strong as the rest of the seasons were.
Even a show that we both love, Psych, I think is not as strong in its later seasons, unfortunately. But it's just fun to watch. For that, I think it's a little more acceptable because it's like a buddy comedy.
Yeah.
So they can just keep going and keep riffing off
It's
each
not
other.
like a drama.
It's still enjoyable.
Yes.
I don't think it ruins the show, to be clear. But then, what's another? I thought of Scrubs. I mean, they ended it great, and then they did an extra season called Scrubs MD. And it's like you have to pretend Scrubs MD doesn't exist because nobody liked it.
Yeah, you can't be too greedy, you know? And it's a hard balance to balance.
It's a hard line to walk. There's, especially with animation, to come back and bring it year after year, keep bringing it at the same quality. It's hard to keep up that, especially when you've got a 9.6 on IMDb. How do you bring that quality back to the table time and time again?
Right. And it came out 3 years ago. So they're doing a 3-year turnaround. I think the first season took years to make and develop. So this is already a pretty quick turnaround for them in comparison. And we'll see kind of how they're able to carry this moving forward. It's hard these days that TV shows take 3 to 4 years, even longer sometimes, to get the next season out because you've already moved on. You've already watched other things. You don't remember what happened in season 1. That's why we're doing this recap. You know, we had to watch some YouTube video recaps as well because it's been a while since we've watched season 1. It's a lot better when shows can come out more frequently so the audience can stay engaged.
One thing that they did, I think, really well, though, to their credit, is they start off really strong where episodes 1, 3, and 9 are really strong. Mm-hmm. So I remember the beginning and end of the show, which is kind of the most important part. So if you're going to take 3 years, it's at least you wrote a show where I remember the climax moments enough that I don't really need to. I might rewatch the season anyway, but I don't need to because I know the broad strokes.
They had big impact moments.
Memorable enough with those big impact moments.
Absolutely. Another show that's kind of similar to that is Invincible. You know, it has 2 or 3 or 4 very big moments that just stick with you because it's different than what you've seen. It's something that you didn't expect in the story. And it was that hook, you know, that kept you interested, and that carries into the next season. So hopefully they live up to our hopes and expectations. Is there anything else for Arcane season 1 that you want to talk about, or going into season 2 that you want to talk about?
I wanted to ask you how you would rank your excitedness as of right now for 3 projects, which would be season 2 of Arcane, season 2 of Blue-Eyed Samurai, and season 3 of Invincible.
Oh, you want me to rank which ones?
Yeah, so rank, or whichever you think is more interesting. Which, if you had to like get rid of 1 or 2 of them.
Was it Kiss, Marry, Kill?
Yeah, Kiss, Marry. I just know I'm not getting rid of season 3 of Invincible.
Yeah.
There's no shot.
Gosh darn it, I really love Blue-Eyed Samurai, though, too.
I think it's pretty self-evident that the animation of Blue-Eyed Samurai and Arcane is honestly better than Invincible.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though Invincible, I think, is really strong in, like you talked about those big moments. In big moments, they show up. Like the fight scene with Omni-Man and Invincible, I think they showed up hardcore.
Yeah. but it's still not the same level of animation as the other two shows. Ooh, this is hard.
The other two are prettier. They're prettier.
Yeah.
I'll give them that.
Honestly, I think if I had to be honest with myself, that was a lot of honests in one sentence.
Wait, are you telling the truth?
I would say that I'd be, honestly, most excited for Blue Eye Samurai.
Dang, yeah.
And then it would be pretty close for Invincible and Arcane. But then when I'm thinking about what I think is going to happen in Invincible, I think that gives me the edge over Arcane because I know more about it. I know like kind of what's coming. And that anticipation is hard to like push aside. So I would probably go Blue Eye Samurai, Invincible, Arcane.
Okay, I can respect it. I mean, I think all three of them are the three best animated shows producing episodes right now. I did like Scavenger's Reign a lot too, and there's also a lot of stuff that I don't watch. Also, not counting anime, because if I counted anime, that would be way too hard. So the like cartoon animated shows.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you another question too. Which one do you think has the best voice acting?
Ooh.
I do think Blood Samurai is really strong.
Really
the voice acting
good.
department. It's hard.
But then we have some heavy hitters in Arcane
Haley
too.
Steinfeld in Arcane.
But then Invincible's freaking stacked. Oh.
Yeah, I mean Invincible, Sandra Oh, J.K. Simmons.
You want me to
Stephen
rank
Young.
them?
Well, I just want to. For this one's easier. Just which one do you think has the best?
The best.
Yeah, you don't have to rank them because I don't want to put you through all that.
Yeah, it's still a tough choice.
Seth Rogen.
I think Invincible, because of maybe like the name recognizability,
recognition.
Yeah. There we go. So I think I'm like more aware of their performances. Maybe in the other ones, I'm more just kind of relating to the character, which maybe that means it's better. I'd say Invincible, and then recency biased Arcane because I've been watching all this recap stuff, and then Blue Eye Samurai. But I have been wanting to rewatch Blue Eye Samurai because I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima with my brother, and we've all basically completed the game this past week. And I keep saying, man, I really want to watch Blue Eye Samurai because it's got a lot of the same moves and a similar kind of style and aesthetic to it. So I really want to go back and watch it. The voice acting is really good.
Never underestimate Aaron's love for samurai culture.
Dude, it gets me going.
I'd probably be inclined to agree with you with Invincible going first. I mean, especially looking at season 1 of Invincible.
Think, Mark.
You have to think, Mark. I still say that all the time too. It's so funny. But like, there's so many great moments. Like, in season 1, and then the Adam Eve special too is just such a performance. So, I mean, season 2 is great, but I think the end episode of season 1 cemented it for me in animation history. One of the best like voice performances because of the conversations between Mark and Nolan.
It has really good dialogue in Invincible. It's so good.
What do you think? I'm just going to enslave all my friends for some alien race that I've never even met?
Yeah. I feel like they don't have those moments as much in Arcane, you know, where it's these intense conversations that are very rememberable, you know? Most of the stuff that I remember from Arcane is the big fights and the animation and stuff, but maybe not necessarily individual conversations. Honestly, in Arcane, when they're having just conversations is when I check out the most. But in Invincible, I'm locked in. And I think it's just kind of the way that it's written. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the dialogue is really strong. And like you said, too, the name recognition of the voice actors in Invincible does help a lot. Because I'm hearing Stephen Young's voice, I'm hearing J.K. Simmons' voice, and that kind of helps me, like, lock in more. Arcane, I do think, like, maybe it's not as memorable, but going back and watching the first episode, I do think, like, it's pretty strong. You know, there's some intensity in the dialogue between Vi and Vander, you know, because Vi wants to go and fight against the enforcers, and Vander just wants the kids to be safe. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could put my finger on exactly what it is, because the subject matter does seem like pretty intense, and it's interesting, but it definitely feels a lot more memorable in watching Invincible.
Where's
Is that Robert Kirkman?
Where's Blue Eye Samurai fit into that?
Blue Eye Samurai is just, I think, to me, really carried by the star. Every time she's speaking, I'm like, I love the way she talks. She has a very like cool factor, very one tone, one note speech. Like they talk about being inspired by Clint Eastwood when they animated it. I feel like it has that cool hero quality. You know,
Yeah.
like Clint Eastwood's just like rolling into town.
Blue Eye Samurai has less characters too that they're balancing in comparison to Invincible and Arcane. So that might elevate it a little bit too because you're so focused on these main characters.
Mizu is just
she's
chef's
awesome.
kiss. Like
She's awesome.
I love that first episode when she's just clowning the whole dojo.
Yes.
Every line is a bar. Like
Yes.
all those lines are well written because I was like out of my chair and she was dissing them. It was awesome.
Dude, I can't wait for season 2. Yeah, I'd say that's my favorite or my most anticipated.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm a little far removed from the hype for it. It's been a while since I've watched anything Blue Eye Samurai.
Well, as soon as Blue Eye Samurai season 2 comes out, our channel is going to explode.
We're going to have so much Blue Eye Samurai content.
Our highest viewed videos of all time, 1 and 2, are both Blue Eye Samurai episodes that we talked about.
You can't spell best without BES.
All right. Anything else about Arcane before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I'm very optimistic, and we'll have to do episodes like a little bit after. We'll talk about it off camera, but let us know in the comments what you want. We can film stuff sooner because it's coming out over the course of all of November, or if you'd rather we just waited and put out an episode after the whole season's been released, then we can do that.
Yeah,
we're going to watch it.
Should we cover each act or just the whole season?
Yeah, your guys' input is what really matters the most because
Absolutely.
we're here to
we're going to be talking either way.
Yeah, might as well record it.
But it just matters if you want to listen.
Yeah, do you want us to do, because that's going to be multiple episodes basically, that's the question.
Right.
If we do an episode after Act 1, then we'll probably do another one after Act 3.
If this video gets 20 views,
we get it. Message received.
Yeah, we'll probably
So
just
messages.
review the whole show. Yeah. We won't do 3 episodes on it. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. We post new full episodes every Monday and Thursday. Make sure you hit that subscription button and the notification bell. The button and the bell sometimes gets me there. Because we put out extra content every once in a while. We have an extra episode or a different type of video. We've done short films and behind the scenes videos of how we made the short films and stuff like that. So you don't want to miss any of that. Where else are we, Andrew?
We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook, all over the place. We post short form content every single day. Make sure to check us out and follow us on all of our platforms. You also can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. So we are on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can go on there, give the show a 5-star rating and review, and help us find new audience members. But the absolute best thing you can do to help new ears find the show is to share us with friends and family, especially those you know in your life that love this kind of stuff that we love, whether it's comic books, whether it's movies, TV shows, video games, all that good nerdy stuff that we love to talk about on here. You also can join in the conversation yourself if you join our Discord. Inflation is hitting us pretty hard, so we'll see how everything's impacted by this election. Aaron, how much does it cost to join the Discord nowadays?
It's almost embarrassing how much we have to charge for this, but it is such a high product that it's justified. But man, it's getting out of control. You can click on the link below and it will be totally free. Yeah, it's totally free. You don't have to pay anything. You just click on the link in the description of this video and you can join our Discord where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics. We talk about upcoming episodes that we've recorded. We take episode suggestions and we get to them pretty quick. And then we do movie polls and ranking lists. We look at and share some of our own content that our members are sharing, and it's a lot of fun. Different memes are being thrown in there, debates, and all of that. So if you want to talk about movies and shows, join the Discord. Andrew's in there, I'm in there. We got a bunch of our guests that have been on the show are in there as well. So join the Discord. Thank you so much for watching. Andrew, you got anything else?
I was just going to say that I'm putting the episode topics in the Discord as we speak right now. So this is video evidence that we do update the Discord on episode topics.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for watching, and
that's a wrap.